friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using the Hello Bluebird Singing in the Rain stamp set. So I've stamped my images out on some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. I'm going to start with this little girl's skin, and I'm using my go-to basic Caucasian combo, which is E000, E00, and E11. I started with that E11, adding some shadows under her hairline and especially down the right-hand side of her face. Since that arm is kind of raised up, it would be casting a little bit of shadow on that side. I also put some shadow on her hands and drew in some little kneecaps to give her some bare legs. And then I'm blending that out with the E00. And then I'll come in with my lightest shade, the E000, and finish everything off so she has a nice highlight. Then I'll go in and give her some rosy cheeks using R11 and R20. Just doing like a little oval shape on each cheek with that R20 and then tracing around that with the R11. Next I'm going to do her hair, and I decided to make her a blonde today. So I'm starting with E50, E51, and E53. I'm taking my lightest shade. I like to color darkest to lightest most times, but when I'm doing hair I do go lightest to darkest because I like to build that color up. So I use the E50 to lay in where I eventually want my darkest shadows to go, on either side of her part and also back behind her ears and where each of her little braids is gathered. And then I'm going to darken that up with the E51 and then the E53. So I just build all the way up to my darkest shade, and then I'm going to work my way back down in the reverse, and this time I'm going to creep a little bit closer into the white space that I have left behind to create that little bit of highlight. So I'm using that E51 now, and then I'll go back in with my E50 and just do a few more flicks to lighten up that highlighted area. And then I'm going to go in with one more darker shade, the E55, and add a few extra flicks to just create a bit more definition. And I'm real sparing with this one, and I'm trying to use very thin little flicking motions so I can get just a little bit here and there to really create that depth. I went back to the E50 to just smooth out the edge of that, and then I'm going to move on to her raincoat, and I wanted to do that in a soft pink. So I'm using R000, R11, and R20. So the R11 and R20 are the same colors I used for her blush on her cheeks. But then I added in the R000 so that it has just a little bit more dynamics in the combo. And I'm using that R20 to add some shadow on the sides of her body, underneath her collar, underneath her arms, and also where the front part of the jacket is overlapping each other. So I just added one line of shading there on the right hand side. Then I'm going to go in with that R11 and begin to blend that out. I wanted the cuffs and her collar to be just a bit darker, so I'm just using the darkest two shades on those. I did skip over her cuffs, but I will go back to those in a minute. Now I'm using that R000 to just blend everything together and make it nice and smooth. And I did do 2 layers of coloring on all of the parts of the images with each combo, just like I always do. Sometimes I leave it in the video. Most of the time I cut it out just to save time, but I just go over everything again with the same exact colors one more time just to make sure that that saturation is really bumped up and the blend is nice and smooth. And then I did go and color her little boots to match her jacket. Just put the highlight in the center since she's facing forward, kept it consistent with her jacket, and then I'm going to move on to her little dress. For that, I wanted to use some pale yellows to kind of tie in the color of the ducklings. I chose Y000, Y11, and Y13 for that. And then once I get to the ducklings, I'm going to add in a fourth shade, which is Y15. And I'm going to use that just so that they're a little bit of a bolder color. I didn't want them to be the same exact shade as her dress. So I used the Y15 on them first, along the back side of their bodies and on their wings, blended forward with the Y13 and then the Y11, and I did throw in a little of that Y000 on the bottom of their face and their belly. And then these other little two on the right hand side, I'm coloring them exactly the same, just using all 4 shades so that they look really nice and, you know, kind of lifted off the page. For their beaks and feet, I'm going to use YR04 and YR07, just a little touch of that YR7 closest to the body and on the back of the feet, and then blending out with the YR04. Really just a couple little dots will do it because it's such a small little area. And then of course I wanted to give them some rosy cheeks as well, just to make them look extra cute and cheerful. So I went back to my R11 and R20 for that. I went back and forth on what color to do the umbrella, but ultimately decided to do a really dark charcoal gray. I didn't want there to be too much color because there's going to be a rainbow in my background, and I wanted the focus to kind of pull to that rainbow, so I didn't want the umbrella color to distract it. Plus I thought maybe the darker gray, almost black, kind of emphasizes the color of the rainbow. So I chose warm grays. I went with W1, W3, W5, and W7. I outlined each section of the umbrella with the W7 so that it would look like it was a little concave in each of those places where the metal kind of spokes are coming out of. And then I blended out the edge of that with the W5. And then I used the W3 on the 2 little pieces on the end. I used the W3 as my lightest because there wasn't a lot of room there. For the lightest shade, which is the W1, on all the other little sections, I did go over that with the W1 just to create that nice highlight, similar to what I had on her shoes and jacket. I just wanted like the centers of each thing to really look nice and shiny. And then I did her buttons with the W3 as well. And once I was happy with that, I trimmed the images out with their matching dies. For my background, I took the Hello Bluebird After the Rain scene die and die cut that out of a piece of Bristol smooth surface cardstock. And then I started to separate out the little pieces so that I could color them with some Distress Oxide inks. The bottom 2 pieces that I have out on my Waffle Flower mini media mat are the sky, and the top piece is the clouds. So I'm coloring the sky with some salvage patina. Just grabbed a piece of scrap cardstock so I could hold that down in place without getting my fingers in it. Not that I really mind getting inky, but sometimes it will lift up the ink where your finger was. So I wanted to have a nice blend. And then I also added just a touch of that to the underside of the clouds. And then I'm going to bring in my next shade, which is Stormy Sky. I wanted this scene to look like the sky after a storm when it's starting to clear up a little bit, but there's still just a touch of that kind of gray clouds or stormy looking clouds. So I'm just adding a bit of that stormy sky on the sky part and then also on the underside of the clouds just to continue the same look up there. And then I'm going to take these two pieces and add a bit more of that selvage patina, just darkening them up here and there, going back and forth between those two colors. And then I'm going to take my Starry Colors watercolors. I've added a little bit of water into this pearlized shade. So I'm going to pick that up with a small paintbrush and tap that against my finger so I get some really nice shimmer in the background. This is going to look really pretty when you tip it into the light, and that's going to be like my scattered rainfall. And then I also wanted to darken that up a little bit so that you could see it even when you aren't tipping the card. So I decided to add a little bit of the Stormy Sky Distress Oxide as well and splattered that on the background. So once I'm happy with these two pieces, I'm going to set them aside to dry, and then I'll grab my next pieces that I want to color. And these are supposed to be clouds, but I'm actually going to turn them into bushes. So I'm going to color them with some Mowed Lawn Distress Oxide Ink. Just kind of tapping that on there, and then to darken those up, I'm also going to add some Lucky Clover. And I'm going to bring that in from the bottom edge. And then I also like to do the splatter effect on anything that's like bushes or trees because it makes it look like little leaves. So I added a bit of that Lucky Clover onto my work surface, and I'm going to splatter that as well. It won't have the shimmer, but it still will have that little speckled detail. And then I'll set these aside to dry. Next, I'm going to work on the rainbow, and because there's only 3 pieces, I decided to try to squeeze 2 colors onto each of the little portions of the rainbow. So this first one I'm doing in pink and orange. I'm using Kitsch Flamingo and Carved Pumpkin. So I just blended the Kitsch Flamingo from the top, and then I'm doing the Carved Pumpkin from the bottom. And then I'll go back and forth between those 2 blending tools where they meet. And then I'll set that one aside and move on to number 2. This one I'm going to do with yellow and green. So I picked Squeeze Lemonade for the yellow, and I'm going to use Twisted Citron for the green. I wanted something that would not look too similar to the bushes, so that's why I went with this one. But in the final card, you won't even see the bottom of this part of the rainbow, so it didn't really matter. For the blue, I'm going back to my Selvage Patina, even though I did use it in the sky. I'm just going to make sure to put it on extra heavy so that it's a darker shade than the sky. And then on the bottom half, I'm going to use Shaded Lilac. So I'm just going to pounce that on and then work back and forth once I get to that transition area. I also tried to darken up the Shaded Lilac just a little bit because this is a very pale purple. And then instead of the final cloudy border at the bottom, I'm going to replace that with a straight one that I've trimmed down to be the same width but just a little bit taller, as I wanted to create a sidewalk. And this one I'm going to shade with some Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide Ink. So I'm just blending it darker on the edges and in the corners and letting it get a little bit softer in the center where I'm holding it, just to create a little bit of a central light source, just like I did on my coloring. So now I'm ready to start assembling my scene, and I'm using my Barely Art Precision Craft Glue again. I have a question for those of you who use this one. Do you keep the pin in there all the time as your little cap, or do you take off the nozzle and replace it with the one that they give you that is meant for storage? I have been leaving the pin in, but I have been getting a few clogs, so I'm just wondering if I'm not supposed to be doing that. So let me know down in the comments. So I'm going to glue this down to my card front. I'm using a piece of Lawn Fawn Mermaid cardstock for my card front. So I'm just lining up that border. I actually die cut the border out of some Spectrum Noir cardstock because I wanted the border to be nice and bright white. and then I'm going to start assembling my background. First piece that I included was the cloud. I will say that this glue dries super fast. I had to kind of pull that up because it wasn't quite straight at the top, and it was already pretty dry. So sometimes that's a good thing that it dries quickly. Sometimes it might be a bad thing. I'm used to the Tombow Mono Multi Glue that takes a little bit longer to dry, and so you have that extra bit of wiggle room. You definitely don't have as much time with this one, but I really do like that precision tip nozzle. So I've added part of my sky, and now I'm ready to fit my rainbow in. I'm just working my way down from the top to the bottom. So there goes that first section of my rainbow, and then I have the center one. So I'm just adding that, and you can see how really thin of a bead of glue you get with that nozzle. It is really great for these thinner die cuts, so thank you guys all who recommended this one to me. So I'll add my last section of the rainbow, and then I've got another piece of sky that goes underneath that. So I'll just add some more glue to the back of that and then fit that piece in. Next comes the cloud border that I turned into the bushes. So I'm going to fit that one underneath the rainbow. I didn't have that blue sky piece right above it quite straight, so I did have to kind of tear that up in a minute here and fix it. It was hard to tell against that mermaid cardstock because it was really similar. And then I have this piece that I'm going to use for my sidewalk. So I thought it was just a slight tiny bit too big, so I'm going to add that into my paper trimmer and take off just a sliver of that, and then I will glue that down in front so it covers up all of the scallop where the bottom of that cloud border was supposed to be. So I'll just fit that inside and glue that down, and now it totally looks like it was meant to be bushes all along. So I've popped my card base in my MISTI. I'm going to stamp my sentiment. It says, "Wishing you showers of joy." I'm using my Twiddler's Nook Pressure Pal to make sure that I get a nice impression there. And I stamp that down a second time so it's nice and bold because some of those letters were overlapping that shimmer paint in the background, so it needed a second stamping. Then I'll open up my card base so I can stamp on the inside. I'm using Lawn Fawn's Peacock ink, and I'm stamping a sentiment from the Hello Bluebird rainbow script, as well as the last two ducklings in the Singing in the Rain stamp set that I hadn't used on the front. So I'm using my pressure pal once again. This time I had to stamp it 3 times until I had like an even coverage because they were brand new stamps. And now I am finally ready to add my images to the front. So I'm going to start with the girl because she is the largest and the most central image, and I want to make sure that I have her on there so I can space the ducklings around her. So I added some more glue to the back of her, and I'm trying to position her so that you at least see a little bit of the orange part of the rainbow and the purple. I don't care about the green as much because I have the green with the bushes in the background. So I managed to get a little bit of all of the colors of the rainbow on the card somewhere. And then I'm going to add my 3 little ducklings. I've got this kind of laughing one over on the left, and then this one here is a little more serious over on the right. And then there's one last little duckling, so I'm just trying to position him so that he looks like he's kind of interacting with the other guys. Decided to push up the first one a little bit so they weren't on the exact same level, just to create a little bit more interest. And then I thought about adding some glitter, but to be honest, I was just really happy with the card the way that it was with all of that shimmer in the background, so I decided to leave it. So there is another peek at the inside. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. We're heading into quite a lot of rain this week, so it seemed appropriate to create this card. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Ring the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I post them twice a week on Mondays and Fridays. If you're interested in any of the products I used, you'll find them listed and linked down below in the description box. And if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. I hope you all have an amazing day. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.